1 year later, it has been a real exciting ride. Getting to have my loved ones here by my side. Teenage me would love to find a reason to why, cause I'm shy now. This version of Joel wants to be your dog and guide. Another new season of Not Your Average Joel starts right now. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Not Your Average Joel. So, as y'all can tell, I'm back in my room. I'm doing another Zoom call, another Zoom episode with another guest here today. He's been here before, and it's always good having Gary back here. Last time I saw Gary, we were doing an in person episode on road trips, and we talked about some fun adventures that we've had and things that we've learned on the road trips, and even talking about solo trips, if it's recommended, if it's something that we should or should not do. So definitely go check that episode out. So I definitely want to welcome back Gary to this episode, and I'm glad that he's here today. So thank you for being here again, and welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me again. This is, beautiful Saturday.
Yeah, so last time, as y'all know, he was in the transition of moving from Washington to Georgia, and he's actually now in Georgia. So last time, like I said, when y'all saw us together, we were in Alabama down in Jemison at his Airbnb where he was staying at. But now he's actually in Georgia. He has settled, he got his settled, he's settled there now, and he is now living his new life in Georgia. And so far, from what I'm hearing, it's positive things, but yeah, I'm hoping that he continues to have even more great things in Georgia for sure. So yeah, I'm definitely glad that he is here. And today we have a really interesting topic that I want to talk about that actually Gary brought up the last time we were talking after our last podcast, because I've noticed that this is a topic that needs to be addressed in my life, because as I do these podcasts, is I do have a struggle with this topic and I want to improve on it. So it's almost like a self reflection for me. So today's topic of the day is going to be on awkward moments or being socially awkward. So I think that this is a good one because I know that Gary has shared with me that he is an introvert. I'm an introvert too by nature. Whenever I was younger, I definitely grew up really shy, and I've come a little bit out of my shell as I've gotten older, but I still have those tendencies of like introverted tendencies. So I do have a few questions that I want to ask Gary, and of course, I'm going to give some input to the questions as well. So I think I want to go ahead and get into this first question because I was already telling Gary before this recording that I'm already struggling with just this first question in general. So I think it's just going to be a fun episode to go over and see if I can get myself overcoming this awkward moments that I have sometimes in life. So here's my
Okay.
first question. So, what are some common phrases that we tend to use during awkward moments, or when it comes to us being just socially, whenever we're in a setting? Like what are some common phrases that you feel like we tend to go to feel like we're not being socially awkward, but then we end up being more socially awkward than ever?
Well, Joel, that's a great question because I like to say use this phrase "fill in the blanks." We like to use filler words such as or like or so on to fill in empty space whenever we converse with another individual. It just makes it more uncomfortable because we are naturally uncomfortable with just empty empty experience. So we tend to we have a tendency to fill it with filler words, and but it's okay to have a the way I see it is it's okay to have a 5 second pause, let your audience have time to process what you just said.
Yeah, I think that's really good to bring up because those three phrases that you just mentioned are three that I feel like I've already used. It's just today in this whole
Oh, I'm
session
guilty.
that we've had already. So I feel like I've already used a good bit. I feel like whenever I hear myself, because I do editing with these episodes, I start hearing myself and I'm thinking, you said again. Like I almost can do like one of those, not that I'm like really into alcohol or anything, but like I could do almost one of those drinking games. Every time you hear the word take a drink or something like that. So I guess I'm gonna have to do that with water right here. So it seems like I'll hear a lot, and that's I think that's the number one phrase that I use where, like you said, it's one of those fill in the blank moments where you're trying to change your top, whether you're trying to change the topic or whether you're trying to complete a thought with whatever topic you're currently talking on. I think is one of those that I struggle with. And like is another one too that I definitely have noticed from doing these podcast recordings that I struggle with as well. Or even like I said, that's like another one I'd say too. Or there's another one that you brought up too that I feel like I use a good bit as well. And that's those are definitely I think probably my top three struggles. Well, those are the phrases that I feel like I'm trying to fill in the blank. And I know that you said that it's, good to sometimes just pause and, gather your thoughts and, like you said, get other people to to really process what they heard. And then once you get kind of have a complete thought in your head, then you can, begin again. So I think that that's, something that I'm still struggling with. Even here I am on episode 87 today, and I still have these tendencies to go to those three words. It's a bad habit, I guess I should say, whenever it comes to my verbal talking or my verbal communication, I should say. I think that's three phrases that I'm going to try to pay attention with and keep my eye on and be more intentional with not saying it as much and try to do even better with embracing socially awkward pauses because that's one thing that I definitely can struggle with for sure.
Right. And it's kind of like psychology. It's a subconscious behavior that we all go through in an uncomfortable situation. For example, you're talking to another person and you put your hands in your pocket because you don't know where you put your hands, so you put it in your pocket. It's a self comforting behavior, and we don't notice. We don't pay attention to that sort of behavior, and it's similar to us using the word or like or as you see or you know. It's our subconscious tendency to fill in empty space. It's kind of like going to an empty house and you just want to fill up with everything, right? It's a subconscious behavior, and we all go through it. So my recommendation is to just be comfortable with that emptiness, be comfortable with a pause. Not like 20-second pause, but have 5 to 10 second pause to just collect your thoughts and just let your audience gather what you just said and process it. If they think it's an empty, it's an awkward pause, they'll ask you. They'll talk. They'll tell you. They'll say, "Hey, are you finished?"
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good to even have those pauses for when it's time to really think about what you want to say next, because you definitely don't want to keep throwing in those fill in the blank moments if you don't have to. I know sometimes we have those tendencies to have those moments where you'll throw in a like every now and then because sometimes it just makes sense to throw it in there. But when like is used every other word, that's where I've noticed from hearing myself that I
Oh,
start to cringe. Yeah, so I'm glad that you can relate to this because this is I don't know if this is something that I'm sure extroverts maybe they struggle with this too, but I feel like it's even harder for people that grew up introverted and doesn't that don't have as good of maybe social communication skills that maybe extroverts do. Maybe they just have the gift of what's that word, the phrase, the gift of gab, maybe, where I feel like they can just talk, 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 and they are just so natural at it. But then someone like me, when I was younger, there I go with the but when I was younger, I would always struggle with that because maybe just fear of rejection, like from people, and maybe I'm hoping to have acceptance from other people, but then whenever I try to communicate with people, it starts feeling like they can just tell that I'm awkward, I'm being socially awkward, and that I'm not gathering my thoughts together, and I'm not as quick with the talking as they are. So I already know, like, if it ever came to, not that I'm hoping to get into no debate or argument with anybody, but when it comes to that, I'm not quick in my words. So I'm sure that somebody can tear me down with some words, but I know that I'm not as good with it. It's something that I try to do even better with, just even as you get older when it comes to things like interviews and even just meeting new people in life as well. And I think with newer people, of course, it's harder because you don't know the person, so you're trying to get to know somebody, but you don't want to make your conversation sound awkward to where they're just going to think, okay, let me step away from this. If this person just doesn't seem that interesting because they seem like they're just trying to find these I don't know, or maybe they're trying to their hardest to get to know you, but then they're being like really awkward about it. And I know later we're going to talk about some things about how we can be really awkward. So I think that this is a topic that I think really is good to have on my channel, just because
Oh,
I, I feel like this is a topic that I could say is one of my biggest struggles is being awkward, which sometimes awkward can be good, but I feel like awkward, especially as me being at the forefront of this podcast, I really want to work on because I want to sound confident in everything that I say, but at the same time, knowing that when those awkward silent moments happen, to be comfortable with it, which that is something that I almost in a way can't fathom because I feel like those awkward silent moments drives me crazy.
that's the thing. It's evolutionary. When you walk into well, this goes back to the primal period. Our ancestors hunting out in the wild when they go into an open field, they get paranoid too because they didn't see anything. They start filling their minds with all these thoughts about getting killed by a predator. So it's evolutionary. It's instinctual. But thanks for bringing up the awkward moment as an introvert versus being extroverts. The next point I'd like to talk about is the what I call lost for words, where that awkward silence when you meet and greet somebody else, and you don't know what to say. Have you had that kind of experience?
Oh, yes. I've had many of those experiences where it's like you want to get to know somebody, but then for some reason, whenever you meet that person, you're just blank. Like you draw blanks and you're like, what am I trying to say? What am I, what am I even talking about? Am I just rambling on about a bunch of nothing? So
Right.
it comes off as awkward for sure. So I've definitely had many experiences with trying to get to know somebody and then just being at a loss of words and not know what to say next.
Yeah, and this might go to your next or subsequent questions. As I think the remedy to that is to start off or to break the ice with open-ended questions. Say, a simple question like, "What do you like to talk about? What do we like to talk about today?" Or what do you look forward to doing this weekend? Or what do you look forward to doing the next couple weeks? The kind of questions that elicit a thoughtful response as opposed to you doing good today. That just elicit a yes or no response, and that really kills a conversation quickly. So you want to ask open-ended question that allows them to think about the question and answer it with some thoughts to it.
Yeah, I remember you bringing that up last time we were here before we even did our last recording on road trips. I remember you talking about how it's a remedy to those awkward silent moments or from those moments where you feel like the conversation can just be awkward or just very short ended conversations is to open up more of the conversation and give some open ended questions to where that person has no choice but to give more than just a yes or no, because that is something that I feel like I even struggle with. And I remember somebody actually recently just told me this. I met somebody online and they told me that they felt like our conversation was more of an interview than a conversation, and it's because I was asking questions that basically were giving yes or no like answers. So I feel like I was asking questions like, "How has 2023 been treating you? Been treating you good?" Or I'll ask maybe,
Yes,
yes,
that's correct. The second question kind of throws everything off.
yeah, so I think that's something that I'm trying to improve on, because it definitely is giving people interview vibes as if I'm a boss trying to get you hired for a job instead of me just talking to you and wanting to have you as a friend in my life. So I think that that's definitely something that I'm trying to do better with. And the question that Gary was referring to was a question that I sent to him about how we know that sometimes it could be hard to go through those awkward silent moments. I'm not sure if anybody else struggles with this, but it's something that I struggle with. And my question was like how to embrace those awkward silent moments to where they feel a little bit more comfortable, even if you don't like it, you make it more comfortable, not as awkward. And I think, yeah, those open-ended questions is really good to bring up. And I actually will give Gary credit for that, because when we first met, I feel like he had some really good open-ended questions. And the first time we had a FaceTime call, actually, I did not expect it, but we ended up having a good, probably 2 hour call, like a FaceTime call. And he was still in Washington at the time. And I remember him being in his vehicle, and I was here in my room.
Yeah, that
And
was my.
yeah, and I remember that his very first question, like he may have asked like casually, "How are you doing?" But then right after that, he asked me, "So what's bothering you? You know, like what are things that bother you nowadays?" And I remember talking to him about stuff like men with emotions, and I brought up so many different things, and that just led to a whole 2.5 hour conversation just from that one question about what are things that irks you or bothers you or something like that along that lines. So I just remember us going into that, and then it just kind of one thing led to another, and we just ended up talking for a really long time. So I feel like even those kind of conversations, I feel like I can learn from others, like people like Gary and many other people that I've spoken to where I'm having more insightful and more deeper conversations than the surface level conversations, because I feel like surface level conversations, which I think we even brought up during our first FaceTime call, is something that I cannot stand. I can't stand the very surface level how are you doing? What's your favorite color? Like stuff. And I was just thinking, I don't really care to know what your favorite color is. I mean, if you would like to share your favorite color, your favorite Disney
Well,
movie or whatever, I mean, it's nice, but
you could frame it differently. You could say, "Hey, so your color is blue. What does the color blue remind you of?" And that frames it differently, and that would elicit a different response because it opens up that door to a lot of different thoughts, as opposed to, "What's your favorite color?" "Blue." "Okay." And then there's that awkward pause, right?
yeah, very true. I think that's good that you even have in a way a skill of knowing how to turn that into an open-ended question, because when you do think of like colors in general, I would think that some people correlate colors with emotions. Like whenever you
Exactly.
think of like red, you think of romance, or you even think of anger sometimes. But then when you think of blue, you think of calm, you think of peace. And I know purple is a color of royalty, I've heard. So there's just so
Or-
many, or yeah, so it's like you hear so many, white is purity, and there's so many different things that you can open up with whenever it comes to even just a simple question as what is your favorite color, and then on top of that, what is that, like what makes that your favorite color, or does that color remind you of? Is there things that come to mind when you think of that color? So it's very interesting how it could turn from a 2 second answer to a 2 hour conversation that started just from that one question of what does this color remind you of, and then it leads to many other things. And I think that I really think it's a really good skill that you have that I want to do better in, because it's something that I I definitely would love to have more of a perfected, maybe more of a better hitting the target with that. So
Yeah,
I
got
think
plenty
that,
of time. Have to live and learn.
yeah, so even though we're all getting more mature and more older these days, where I'm in my 30s now, but I'm still learning. I'm still knowing that there are things to learn about myself that I could even improve on. So I think just understanding that there's always room for growth in every area of your life, including this one for me. I think that just being aware of that is good, and then just going after it and just trying harder with it.
Right. And next time in the near future when you go into a restaurant, when you go out to eat, just pay attention to what the servers tell you, what the servers ask you. For example, if you go to a fast food restaurant like McDonald's or Burger King, they'll ask you what you like to eat, and then you place your orders, and then just pay attention to what they ask, what they follow up with. They'll say, "That's it." That will just shut off the conversation. But if you go to, let's say, a five-star Michelin rated restaurants where they have the whole tablecloth and all this so fancy utensils, pay attention to what the servers would ask you questions. They'll ask you questions like, "What would you like to eat today?" Or what would you like to drink? As opposed to say, "That's it," or "How's the food?" And then that elicit a good bad response, as opposed to how are how's your dinner today, or can I get you anything else? And that sort of those sort of words, the way they structure their questions.
I get what you mean, definitely. With when it comes to a fast food restaurant, they're just ready to close the conversation off. They just want to take your order, move on to the next person. But they're at a restaurant, they do have a little bit more open-ended dis- discussions with their customer, because even though it may be busy, but they want to make sure you get everything that you are wanting, and that you are getting the best experience that you can at a restaurant. So I think even learning from the restaurants and from the servers, I think that that's even really good, because whenever you think about it, whenever you don't present an open-ended question, you give a short-ended question like a yes or no. I think it almost gives that other person the vibe that maybe this person is not interested in really talking to me. They're just trying to bring up small talk, and that's definitely something I don't want to give off if I'm trying to get to know somebody as a friend. And you definitely don't want them to feel like, well, this is going to go nowhere if we're just going to have small talk and simple conversations that are boring and redundant, because it's questions that everybody brings up, like just simple surface level questions. So I feel like when you open up the doors and expand your horizons with your questions and give them more open-ended questions, I think that person that's receiving the question may think, okay, well, this person really does want to go deep and really does want to get to know me and wants to learn more about me, even if it is something just with your favorite color, or even if it's like favorite restaurant,
Like, would you
you
like
can.
fries that versus what kind of side would you like on your entrees?
Yeah, so there's so there's so many different ways to look at it. So I like that. I like that there's just many different perspectives to look on, even just observing other people and then trying to put that into your life with the way that we communicate. So I think that this is definitely a learning experience, which is what I love about this podcast because you do these podcasts and you meet different people on here, or I reconnect with people that I haven't seen in a long time, and you just learn things about either that person, or I even learn things about myself, or just learning on how to do better at different things in my life. And I think this is definitely
Absolutely.
needed.
Yeah, I just take a slice of a little bit here and there, and you develop yourself. You kind of just use those little building blocks to develop your own person, develop yourself as a person. Oh,
Absolutely.
well, sorry to cut you off. There's a third point I'd like to bring up. I don't know if you ever had this awkward experience. I call this a mutual courtesy, where you're talking to another individual and you unintentionally cut them off, and then both of you try to reconciliate by giving each other the opportunity to speak, and then at the same time, both end up speaking at the same time.
Oh my
You ever
gosh.
had that experience?
Yes, I've most definitely have had that experience before where even here on the podcast, I've done that before where I think sometimes also one struggle with that is sometimes there's a delay on the other person's end. So I think that they're done. And then I start talking, then we end up talking at the same time. We're like, oh, who's about to talk next? But then even just in person conversations, even when there is no time delay that's happening, you get the instant conversation there. I think I've definitely had those moments, especially in my family. I feel like maybe we're all like whenever someone's done talking, we're all just ready to add our input, and then all of a sudden we're like, "Oh, you go ahead. Nope, you go ahead. Sorry, sorry." Like yeah. So I've had that for sure. I'm sure you've had those experiences as well.
Yes, and my recommendation to that to remedy is we said before, is to go be have that comfortable 5 to 10 second pause, wait for that person to speak.
Hmm.
It's kind of like playing a video game where you just restart everything and just take a moment of silence, and then have either the person speak, or if he wants you to speak up, he'll ask you, what were you saying? And then you could continue that conversation and not, and have just, that's an awkward moment, but it's still an acceptable awkward moment. It's not too awkward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I think that it's good take that pause, even though for me it's something I'm still trying to do better with. I think it's good to have those pauses because you're, like we have already mentioned, getting to have that opportunity to gather your thoughts, and for the other person that's receiving your input or your opinion on something to really take it in. And then whenever they're ready to present their part or their opinion in the conversation, it's it's at least they have their thoughts together. And I think that it's good to have that pause, even though it's I'm really trying to do better with this one, but I even struggle with it on here. Whenever I feel like somebody is done with their point, then I'm like, okay, let me jump in and I'm going to say something. But then, even though I know I can probably easily edit it out if I wanted to, just that small portion, but it's something that I still want to do better in because whenever I think of awkward silence, I think of sometimes when I think of awkward silence, this actually happened a few days ago, an awkward silence story. So I was driving with my mom and one of my brothers. We were going out with some family, and anyway, we were driving, and we usually my mom and me and my brother were usually just talking, and then sometimes when when we run out of conversation, we just go to, all right, so do we want to listen to some music? And that usually just deals that's our remedy to an awkward silent. But there was one time where or I usually wait for someone else to say, let's listen to some music because I don't want to seem like I'm not interested in talking to you. Let's just throw on some music. So I wait for someone else to offer to let's listen to music. So it wasn't happening. And we were just driving awkward. It was like awkward silent for a good 2, 3 minutes. And then I was like, are we okay? Is everything okay? And my mom's like, yeah, everything's good. She's like, I'm just sitting back here. It's all, and like we're all good. So I was like, okay. It's like I just wanted to make sure because it just seemed that 2 to 3 minute awkward silence was just driving me crazy. But
Oh
it's
yeah.
definitely I'm still trying to do better with that. And you would think that with these awkward silent moments that me as an introvert would appreciate that more, but I actually don't really appreciate it. You would think that I'm thinking, okay, good. No one doesn't want to talk to me because I'm maybe not open to wanting to conversate with other people, but even introverts like me can definitely see this as a challenge that I want to overcome.
Yeah, hey, that's a fair statement. Oh, speaking about changing the subject, I want to get to that fourth point. So, you ever found yourself getting into conversation with somebody and throughout the time you unintentionally change the subject that's totally relevant? People look at you and say, "Hey, that's kind of off topic," and where'd you get that?
Yeah, I've definitely been in one of those conversations, and it feels like it happens very often with people in my life where we're just talking about one thing and then all of a sudden out of nowhere somebody brings up a whole random thought and then we're like, where did that come from? So you start to wonder, are is what we're saying at the time boring to them and they're not even invested in the conversation, so then they just start thinking of their own thoughts and then they just blurt it out of nowhere and it's like, oh, okay, so we're just changing, we're going right from talking about sports to talking about what they saw at Walmart the other day. So it's like it's just
That's totally irrelevant.
yeah. So it's like it just shows that we can tend to, I guess, whenever we get bored with a conversation we tend to just start thinking of our own things and then we are thinking that, not really thinking that the conversation is already happening, but it is happening within our head. So then we just blurt out something random from the conversation that we're having with ourselves in our head while everyone else is talking about a whole different topic. So I have
Right.
for sure been through that.
Personally, I just try to engage, just keep my mind engaged with that conversation. I know it could be boring sometimes, and but the longer you engage, you keep your mind engaged with the conversation. They could tell you're getting bored, that you have no interest in their conversation. They'll ask you, like, you seem bored, and um, and then you could start voicing your mind as opposed to you actively trying to change the subject, trying to control the conversation, and then it gives the impression that you were hijacking the conversation. So, I mean, as an introvert, I'm a listener, so I would keep on listening to the conversation. But at the same time, they could tell I'm zoned out,
Yeah.
and then they'll, oh, Gary, you seem bored. And I'll just be honest with them. I said, I am. I don't watch sports. And then they'll say, so what do you like? What do you enjoy doing? And I could start inputting my own thoughts to it. I like going to the movies. I like hitting the gym and etc. So, yeah, you don't have to be in control of every conversation. Just let let just keep your mind engaged with what they have to say. If there's something pops up that interests you, hey, chime in. If it doesn't, if nothing interests you, it's not your last conversation, right?
Exactly. I think that that's good that you brought that up to keep your mind engaged when it comes to a conversation, even if it's something that you particularly don't want to talk about. Because whenever you start getting bored, you like you said that they can probably tell that you're zoning out, you're just like staring off into space and or you're getting on your phone, you're just going through
Absolutely.
social media, and you're doing other things other than listening to what they're actually saying. And whenever you hijack a conversation and just interrupt and change the whole subject altogether, it does come off as rude, and it comes off that
As
you yeah, you don't really care about what that person really has to say. I just want to control the whole conversation, and I want everything to be around things that I like to talk about. And so it definitely could be more, there could be some work being done with that in my own life. I can even do better with that, because there may be times where I'm just given one word answers just to make them think that I'm hearing them, but then I'm really like zoned out. They're probably rambling on about something. I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm just saying yeah throughout the whole conversation, but really, am I really taking in what they're saying? So I could even admit that I've had moments of being inconsiderate towards people
oh, I've been
with, yeah, it's I'm guilty of it for sure. So I want to do better with that, most definitely. So it's all about learning and evolving into a better person and growing in all of these areas like we mentioned here a few minutes ago. So I
absolutely.
definitely I definitely want that to be something that I can do better in and be more considerate.
And also, it's okay to take a break and walk away briefly from the scene and go do your own thing. Like go talk to another person or go check your phone. Say, hey, I got to take this phone call. Step out. You know, do your thing. Read something to kind of refresh your, kind of recharge, and then come back. Hey, you never know when you come back to the conversation. Maybe they may talk about something that you might be interested in.
Hmm. Yeah, very true. You just never know that even doing something like that, where you just step away from the conversation and coming back, it may turn out that they completely changed the whole subject, and now you're ready to conversate and get into talking with them about whatever it is that you're talking about. So I think even just taking a break, and even as we've mentioned about taking an, a pause during our awkwardly socially
Interaction.
awkward interactions. Yeah, I think it's good to have and to embrace it a little bit more, to where it becomes natural on how to handle those situations.
And that's kind of how arguments start when, for example, for example, when two people argue, is because they're not listening to one another. So they cut one another off. And they bring up something that has nothing to do with the conversation, and then it brings up more frustration, and everyone started raising their voice like, "What are you talking about?" And it's the same. That's how altercations happen. So it's just the whole changing a topic or interject with something irrelevant. It's a micro. I call it micro argument.
Yeah, and that is true, that even interrupting somebody while they're trying to make a point, even in an argument, or if it started off as just a regular conversation, but then someone keeps cutting you off, then you feel like you're going to cut that person off, and one thing leads to another, and it turns out into an all shouting match, and then from there you just never know where it can go from there. So I think that even just from doing simple, well, someone can look at it as a simple interruption to a conversation, but then when they're making that a habit and they're just constantly interrupting people, it does rub off the wrong way for the person that's receiving the interruption, because then they're thinking, okay, well, this person is just rude and inconsiderate, so then they start feeling that I got to get back at them, and so I'm going to interrupt all of their conversations, and then it just people going head to head with that kind of stuff. So I think it's just like you said, back to your point about being engaged with your mind, and like during a any conversation, or even if you're don't feel as engaged, just let them know, hey, I'm going to step out for a minute. I'll be right back, and you never know, it changes, and the conversation changes, and you can be able to have that conversation with them then. So I think that there's a lot that everyone can learn from this.
Oh yeah. I mean that goes along with extroverts too.
Yeah, it really does because even with extroverts, when it comes to something like this, where they feel like they can control the conversation because they talk more and they're more natural with their words and the flow of their words and all of that. I think that it's something that they feel like they're more mm, gifted at whenever it comes to just having a conversation from being being different being
Unique?
yeah, being unique. And I think that they feel like maybe everything that they say bring is like significant and more important than what someone else would have to say. So and that can rub off people like introverts the wrong way or other extroverts the wrong way. And then before you know it, it can turn into some arguing for sure.
Right. Well, speaking about walking away, this we also talked about this last time. Not knowing the social cues to end the conversation. You ever had those interaction?
Yes, I've had many of those where you feel like you're wanting to end the conversation, but you don't know how to end the conversation because you don't want that person to think, okay, well, I'm done talking to you. I don't want to talk to you no more. But at the same time, you may be thinking that in your head. You may be thinking, okay, I want to be done with this conversation, but I don't want them to think that I'm sick of them or I just want to take a break. I'll see you tomorrow or whatever the case may be. So I've had those moments where you want to either have somebody in the conversation for you and they don't do it. So then you almost think, how do I do it? Or even like in a situation where somebody comes over to your house and they don't leave the house, but you're like thinking, how do I get this person to leave without sounding rude? That I want you out of my house because I'm ready to go to bed. So
Yeah.
there's even those awkward moments too.
Yes, it's kind of like what we talked about last time, the eight step to Southern goodbye. You get that social cue that you're leaving, and then you hug each other, you keep on going the conversation, and you just slowly stepping out the house, and then you hug each other again. Then you continue the conversation. Then you step in the car, and then just say your final goodbye. And the last thing, someone from behind says, "Hey, watch out for a deer."
Yeah, yeah, we gotta watch out for those deers. So it is true here in the South that we are really bad at it. And I even know last time I saw you in person, I feel like I was bad. Not I wasn't bad on it on the first day, but I feel like knowing that the after we did a podcast recording that it was the last time I was seeing you in person for a little bit. I started doing that Southern goodbye process. I was doing all of this. All right, well, I'm glad that we were able to do this, and thank you for letting me come over, and all of this, and then we said our goodbyes, and then I felt like I was about to try to carry on another conversation. I was thinking, hold on, I'm about to start falling into that trap. So I was like, all right, let me get out of here. I'll see you later, and
It's
because I
kind
know I do that
of
same thing.
me growing up in New Jersey, we just say, "All right, we gotta go, bye," and just walk off. I mean, that's convenient, but at the same time, for some other different regions in the United States, that's kind of considered rude.
Yeah, I know. I've even heard of like the Irish goodbye, where they don't even say goodbye. It's just all right. So you just don't see them. It's like okay, well, where they go. So it definitely
Right?
is definitely different to adjust to the way other people's upbringings, even just based off, even though we're both raised here in America, but just in different geographical areas, it's different how people conversate in that way. And not only just with accents, but even like you said with this, the social cues of how to say goodbye and when and how long that goodbye can happen. For us, it happens. It's a long process to say goodbye and to get somebody out of your house.
I think my experience is it's good to it helps to give your give the person who you're interacting with a sense of predictability. Just let them know or given an advance warning that, hey, I need to wrap this up in a minute because it's getting late. And that kind of triggers their mind to think, okay, it's getting late, and then you can have a conversation and just say, hey, I have to wrap this up, and we could do this another day without instead of just saying, "Hey, I gotta go, bye," and then you walk off, and that makes you the bad. That makes you the rude person.
Yeah, it's good to have that predictability, like you said, that to for people to at least expect that okay, they're about to leave here soon, so I'm at least expecting that instead of thinking when are they leaving? So they're or whoa, where did they go? They're already gone. So it's definitely good to have that predictability of letting the person know, hey, what I'm going to have to go here in a few minutes and then just kind of close out your conversation and then you end up meeting with that person again. So it's
Exactly.
definitely it's interesting how it can be different for just people throughout the whole world that we're not all on the same page with this.
Yeah.
So I think my final question that I have on here is actually one that I want to talk a little bit more about because
Yeah.
I think that this is a good one because the last question is have you ever been awkward or do you consider yourself an awkward person? And if so, like in what ways are you awkward?
I mean, hey, I think we're all different. So sometimes we vibe with people. Sometimes we don't vibe with other people. For example, being introverts, sometimes we just don't vibe well with extroverts until one or two extroverts you stumble upon just develop the fond of you and just decide to adopt you as friends. Um, so it, I, I mean, I could say my awkward characteristics. One of my awkward characteristics would be sometimes over something I'm passionate about, I would just ramble on and on and on, and people would just get overwhelmed with what I'm saying. So, I mean, over time, I developed the skill to just tell people, hey, listen, I tend to ramble on over something I'm passionate about. So cut me off if you find that I'm overwhelming. And so therefore, they know that you have certain awkward characteristics, and they can say, hey, listen, like, I know you love what you're talking, you love the topic that you're talking about, and they'll cut you off and they'll interject with something else different, and then you know your limits. So as opposed to you not knowing yourself, and then you just go on with with your own character, and you end up overwhelming your audience.
Yeah,
My
rambling
friend
on.
does that to me. He said, "Hey, I know you just ramble on, so I'm just zoning out." As all right, totally understandable. I want to stop.
Yeah, I think rambling on is definitely something that I definitely can relate to as well whenever it comes to something that I'm passionate about, which many of these topics that I talk about on my podcast is something that I'm very passionate about. So I do start rambling on, and sometimes I'll start repeating the same phrases over and over again. I've even noticed that even during this episode, I'll go back to feeling like, all right, so here's a filler that I'm going to throw in there to kind of close out my sentence or my speech or my answer to a question. So I feel like I do a lot of that for sure, and that is something that makes it even more awkward on my end of things, where I feel like, okay, you're really showing that you almost feel like either you don't know what you're talking about or you just don't have much to say in it, but you're gonna try to. It almost reminds me of like an essay back in school where you feel like you have to write a 5 page essay on something, but then you're almost saying in just in one paragraph the same thing over and over again, but just worded differently. I feel like that's what I do when it comes to rambling on. I'll change the way I'm saying it and think that I'm saying something completely different when in reality I'm not. And it just sounds like I'm just yapping about a whole bunch of nothing.
Oh yes, and the biggest key to take home here is have a self awareness of you know your characters, your tendencies to use filler words, to ramble on, to not knowing the social cues, or not showing interest in a topic that's been circulating around a group of people. Just the key to take home is have that self awareness to say, hey, this is happening. I got filler words. When did it happen? And just say, okay, I'm going to stop, or I'm going to use less filler words. Um, so, I mean, that takes practice. It doesn't come overnight.
Hmm. Yeah, and I
As long
think
yeah, there goes our what was it, 0.5 or something,
yeah.
or 0.3 equal courtesy.
You can go ahead.
Oh, start with you.
Okay, but I was just thinking about hold on.
Take your time.
This is something that I've actually had for sure happen with family where I feel like we both interject and then I completely my whatever I was thinking it just disappeared. So that's where I'm at right now with this. But so I know what I was gonna say. So I know another thing that I was thinking about, that you mentioned about self-awareness, and which is really important to have. And this is something that I like even doing about this podcast is giving myself a mirror and saying what can I do better in, which is why we're having this conversation on awkward social cues. And another thing that I noticed that I've done a good bit is awkward laughing. I'll try to think that I'm trying to do
Yeah.
like or yeah, I'll just do this. It's almost like a fake laugh, you might as well say. But I'm trying to do it in a way to where I don't want to sound like I'm coming off serious and not mad, but just that I'm not putting like a light into a conversation. So maybe that's why I do a good bit of like, or because I'm trying to just add in
Yeah,
maybe
I know.
a light-sided thing to the conversation.
I mean, that's perfectly fine. It's just another, like I said, it's a defense mechanism of to counteract an uncomfortable social situation. So we do it all the time. Like I said, hands in a pocket, kind of like rubbing the back of our neck. We're touching a finger. That's what I'm doing right now. Is these are all self-assuring, kind of like self-comforting behavior that we do subconsciously to kind of cushion the uncomfortable situation. So yeah, that fake laugh. I mean, I wouldn't even consider it fake. It's just it's a genuine behavior. So I mean, everyone likes laughter. So yeah, I mean, it's good that you're noticing that behavior.
Yeah, I'm definitely trying to look at myself and think, like you said, it's not fake laughing really. So maybe I'll retract from the word fake, but more of just it is coming from a genuine place, but it's almost in a way similar to like a fill in the blank word or a
Sure.
filler where I'm trying to either put for me, the awkward laugh comes during it's my way of putting a period to the end of my conversation and what I want to say to where I'm inviting the other person to add their input. So I feel like that's what I've even just seen just from doing these episodes is I feel like that's somebody's way of thinking, okay, this person he's done with this part because they heard the cue of your turn, basically is what it sounded like. So that's something that I'm definitely seeing and like you said, when it comes to doing things like whether you like, have your hands up like this or whether you're, doing this or, I've noticed even for me, I've just seen myself do it during this episode. All of a sudden I was like, do this. I'll start like touching my face randomly. And it's in a way giving you reassurance and maybe more
Yeah,
comfortability to maybe the nerve. There's not maybe not nerves, but maybe just reassuring that you're okay. You're it maybe you're gonna get through this. Like you're just not going to. It's I don't know. I think it's just gonna be okay, and that it's nothing wrong with it. But you're just going to make it more awkward when you point it out that it's awkward. Because for me, I've done that before where if something's awkward, I'll basically say, well, this is awkward, or I'll do that awkward moment. So I think that basically pointing it out that it's awkward can make it more awkward.
right. And when you turn on your television and look at the current events, and you look at how our political figures are speaking, they're very great public speakers, and just pay attention to their body language and take a look at how they structure their phrases. And you don't hear a lot of like, or those sort of filler words where, and they're okay with awkward silence, that the one we consider awkward pause. You don't just hear them just talk, or like, they just make their statement, 3 second pause, they continue on, 3 second pause, and 3 second, and continue on. I mean, just pay attention to what their behaviors, their physical behaviors, their verbal behaviors, and you can learn from it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Learning from other people and the way they structure their sentences is very important because you can put that into your life and you can have better practices, better habits of getting your point across without it sounding like you don't know what you're talking about when you throw words like because then the moment you throw in a or another fill in the blank, it does make it sound like you don't know if you know what you're fully talking about, or maybe you're not as confident in what you're saying. So learning from other people is definitely beneficial to our own lives when it comes to communication.
Yeah, I mean, my experience being in the military is like our period. Like, so for example, if we're calling for support on the radio, you will say line one, and you come up with these phrases, and then you want to end the statement, you just say break, line two, blah 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 blah, break, line three. I mean, we don't talk like that. We don't talk like robots. But
Yeah.
I mean, when I talk to, for example, on this podcast, when I finish a conversation, instead of filling with, like, or, like, for example, for your case, ha ha ha, mentally, I just say break, line two, like that. Have that mental or visual memory. It just have that have that structure in mind. How, like, when you talking to the next podcast, yeah, just rehearse what you have to say mentally, and when you feel like there's a tendency to say, like, just stop, like, don't say it. And then when you finish the statement, just say period, next line.
Yeah, that's good to have those mental conversations with yourself, not in a way of steering away from a conversation that you're having with somebody, but more of, like you're saying, more of a self-reflecting moment of, okay, this is what I'm gonna do whenever I end the conversation. I'm just gonna end it there, break is what you're saying in your head. And, for me, that's something that I should do that, all right, you're done. Let this person put their input. Don't throw nothing awkward. Don't throw those fill in the blank ones that you tend to go to very often. So it's good to have that mental conversation with yourself to where everything that you say comes off naturally and it doesn't sound like you are unsure of what you're saying and that you're gonna try to make it less awkward, but then when you're not prepared or when you throw in those fill in the blank words, it makes it even more awkward on your end. And you're having a conversation with yourself, like, why did I say like, why did I say And so those are key words that I think going forward, I'm going to try to do better with. I'm going to improve for sure. It's all about growth here.
Well, if you notice, just the last, I would say hour, I don't know, I lost track of time. You've been using like a lot less just for our conversation because we were just bringing up self-awareness. We were just bringing up all these subconscious behaviors that you and I do. So, I mean, great job. I mean, I could see the improvement.
I appreciate that. I'm really trying to do better in this area, and with with your point of self-awareness, I think that's what I'm trying to invest more into my life because it's something that is important to have with being aware with what you say and many other things with what you do too. But for today, we're talking about what you say and how we communicate. And that's something that I'm definitely working on. So, and it's definitely harder for me, even though like I'm from the South and here I go using like, but I'm from the South and we talk slower, but I feel like I am talking slower than I usually do, which I guess leads to where I feel like I'm rambling on sometimes. So I sometimes talk slow according to other people, but then I feel like I talk too fast for the Southerners because they talk slower. But here I go, I talk faster, but my fast is slow to other people. So it's one of those things that I'm trying to work on to where I feel like I'm talking. I've noticed in during this podcast, I'm talking slower, but at the same time, I'm gathering my thoughts a little bit more and feel like I'm able to present my input on this conversation a lot better. And I do feel like I have to give credit to you, one of many people that I feel like that has been helpful with this. So I definitely appreciate you with your help with this because it's been something that I've struggled with, and I definitely want to have that help from other people and to feel motivated that, yeah, 30 years of my life I've done it one way, but it's never too late to turn it around when it comes to how we
Oh,
communicate and conversate.
yeah, no, you're never too old. Age is just a number.
Yes, I like that. Yeah, age is just a number, and 30, like 30 is a young number. As in still not young. Where you're young as you think you are, like you're as young as you think you are. Like, even these people that are in their 50s or 60s, they probably view themselves as young still, even though we may view them as old. But if they think they're young, they're young. So they're 50 years young, not 50 years old. So I think that that's a good thing to think of. Even when you are 50 years young or old, it's never too late to change yourself and to grow and to do better.
Certainly not.
So I definitely think that in closing of this conversation, I really appreciate you bringing up this topic because it's something that I could even do better with on this podcast, and not only on this podcast, but also in real life whenever I'm talking to somebody face to face. Because as I'm slowly coming out of my shell I don't think I'll ever fully be an extrovert, but I'm slowly coming out of that introverted shell and peeking out into the extroverted world of being more adventurous with having conversations with different people from all over the world. It's something that, I need to be more aware of and for that person to feel like I know what I'm talking about and for that person to see that I'm confident in everything that I say and that I'm not questioning everything in my head, wondering, am I saying the right things? Am I rambling on? Am I not talking enough? So I definitely really appreciate you bringing up this topic, and I definitely appreciate you being on this with me today.
No, I'm very grateful for you bringing me up here. I love these conversations. Like we could have a part two where we talk about something different that's relevant to social interactions. Because uh, during my undergrad, psychology was my degree.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
all right. What else you like to talk about? I mean, I have all day.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that you were in psychology, like you went to undergrad for psychology. That's really interesting. So that makes even more sense as to why I feel like you have been a big help with me when it comes to this topic of awkward social cues and just having those awkward silent moments and how to embrace it, because a lot of it is a mind game where we're having conversations with ourselves. So it makes complete sense now as to why you know a lot more on it, even though you come from a place that I come from of introvertness, but you have that schooling and education of the mind and how people interact with one another. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, but not to worry, I cannot read your mind.
Yeah, so yeah, you don't have that. What is that called? Telekinesis or something where you can read somebody's mind?
I don't even know. But it really carries over my career as a dentist because when we talk to our patients, when we try to alleviate anxiety, we like to frame our questions, our conversations to make the patients feel like they're in control of the situation. And it makes a big difference between a good day versus a bad day.
I like that. I think that, bringing those open-ended conversations between, because going to the dentist for many kids and even for adults can be nerve-wracking, and there's that anxiety that comes with it. So whenever you come into the conversation with, for one, the way you speak, with your tone, and if it comes off more comforting than just, okay, I'm here, let's get it over with. I think that it does relieve that anxiety and that uncomfortability with people to feel more open to talk with you and to have more open discussions with you in regards to what's going on with their mouth, with their teeth, their gums, all of that. So I think that it's good when you come from the place of, how can I make this situation more comfortable for you as a dentist? Because I think being a dentist is definitely very needed, and definitely everyone needs to go to the dentist. So it's good to have someone like you as a dentist that is willing to go more out there than just feeling like, okay, I'm checking your teeth, all right, that's it, we're done. That you're going to put in that extra effort and to have that conversation with people and to make someone feel like, I want to go back to him as my dentist. And I think that's good practicing skills to have with communication and
Oh yeah,
even,
that's very important.
yeah, yeah, so it's really good to have that kind of skill in order to give off that good vibe with people and to realize, okay, I can feel comfortable and open up with this person. So just really in general, whether you're a dentist or whether it's a job that I do as a data management analyst, even though I don't meet up with people face to face in person, I do work remotely from home. So sometimes there are phone calls that I have to have and meetings that I have to have where I want that person to know that I'm dependable and that they can count on me. So I make sure I give them everything that they need, and I don't give them the short answers, or I don't feel like, or just feel like I am get or not giving them Let me think of a point here. So, okay, so, but I think just the whole point of getting my point across and feeling confident in what I'm saying and making that person feel more comfortable with coming to me for help is what I was going to get to is I think is important. And so even though I'm typing because a lot of the times, I may be on a phone call with somebody, but most of the time I'm typing, and that's where sometimes your words and your tone can be lost in the and it's almost translated in a way as this person's saying a whole bunch of nothing, and I could be feeling like I'm explaining something clearly, but sometimes they may read it and think, "Huh? Like this looks foreign to me." So I've been, even from the beginning of my work to now, I feel like I've tried to improve on that as well because even those text messages or those messaging on chat with other coworkers can be awkward if we make it awkward by rambling on about something that they have no clue about or no experience with. So I'm even with work trying to do better with that too.
Oh, big time, yes.
So it's definitely all about growing, all about evolution, but not in the way of evolution that people think of scientifically, but more just evolution of us becoming a better person than who we were once at one point. We want to do better than the past version of ourselves. So it's all about trying to be better than who we once were. That's where I was getting to. So I definitely am glad that we had this conversation. And and definitely if I ever think of any more questions or anything in regards to awkwardly awkward moments or socially awkward moments, I definitely would love to have you back for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. I'd love to be here.
Yeah, and I noticed for sure is another one that I say too to feel like if it's not the awkward laugh, it's the for sure that I throw in there, or I'll say most definitely there at the end, or that. So I've even realized things like that I do that a little too much too. So not that I feel like it's super awkward, but I just feel like that even that is something that I could even do better with. And and I just realized something else that just happened is that I'll have moments where I feel like I get awkward and all of a sudden my voice cracks out of nowhere. It's the worst thing ever to me whenever my voice cracks, especially on the podcast. Because I was thinking maybe people are thinking, oh man, he's nervous, but sometimes it's not just nerves. It's just sometimes it's well today I got pretty good sleep, but sometimes it could be a lack of sleep where my voice just is not given any energy, so it just wants to do all of the cracking. So even those moments I try to embrace better. I try to just realize, okay, I'm human. I know I'm gonna have those moments where I have a voice crack, and I shouldn't have to make it awkward because it's human nature. It's something that's bound to happen. For me, it's not something that I can control.
Yeah, and that helps by like that the 5 to 10 second pause, for you to give yourself some time to breathe.
Yeah.
Your voice doesn't crack.
Yeah. So see everybody, this is all about learning. So if y'all have any moments where you feel like you have any of these tendencies with being socially awkward, even if it's not just a voice crack or anything like that, if it's anything that we've talked about, like with interrupting somebody or just changing the subject fully, I definitely think that this is good for viewers to even hear because it's something that we can all gain something out of this for sure. And it's very I feel like I've heard this phrase that knowledge is power. So I think that the more that we learn about a specific topic, the more that we can perfect ourselves into being better in that area.
Yeah, and also, when in doubt, if anything happens, or anything, all else fails, you could just say, "Sorry, I'm just being a weirdo. I'm just
Yeah,
awkward."
yeah. Hey, that's some honesty right there. I think that it's good to just be honest with yourself and with others too. Like even in those conversations, that you could be okay. I don't know what I'm talking about, or oh, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, continue, or something like that. So I think that it's good to be honest with yourself and to be honest and to be open with other people that and to admit that I don't know what I was gonna say, or sorry, I'm being awkward, or anything like that.
Yeah, there's no, as long as you recognize that, people should give you that leeway as opposed to you not being aware and just keep on being yourself without consideration of others. Because extroverts think differently. They get their energy from different source than we do. So, I mean, we all have our own space. We all have our own niche. So, um, it's okay to be yourself at the same time. Let your audience know that you're being yourself and say, "Hey, you know what? Here's my awkward moment," and move on, move forward. People generally are more understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good that many people can come from a place where they can understand the things that the 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 places and the experiences that introverts go through when it comes to this interactions that we have with other people that may not be introverts, or maybe they are introvert themselves. I think it's important to realize that you're not alone, viewer, if you go through these same struggles, because even going through this conversation right now, as I'm slowing down and talking without trying to use like and as much, I feel like in my head I'm telling myself, you're making this topic more awkward than it has to be, and you're
Oh,
making this.
a lot better.
Yeah, so but me in my head is telling myself this is an awkward conversation, even though it's not an awkward conversation. It's out of my natural element of conversation as far as how I communicate with people on a normal basis, which that itself may be more awkward than what I'm doing right now. So it's it's things that I am overcoming my own thoughts about this whole conversation.
Fair point.
So, anyways, everybody, I think this is going to end this conversation. I definitely would love to talk more about this. I think this is something that people should talk more about. I like the idea of talking about maybe that phrase, the big elephant in the room. And this is probably my elephant because it's something that I've had said many times. I've struggled with this one, just being someone that's very shy and has a hard time with getting my point across sometimes. So I think that this is an elephant that I would love to continue to visit and to continue to improve on this and to eventually get that elephant out of the room and to be even better with my communication skills. So thank you for your help and thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. I mean, from now on, you could probably say, instead of saying an awkward interaction, we call it a social glitch.
Mm. I like that. Social glitching. That's a pretty good phrase there. I've actually never heard of that before.
And that opens up to more topic that I could brainstorm with you down offline. And yeah, we could talk more about this social glitch, and yeah, we can make it a podcast 2.0 in the next chapter.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. So everybody, I hope that y'all stay tuned for that one. we end up doing that one on social glitching among with many other things, I'm sure. Definitely stay tuned for that, everybody. So I definitely appreciate everybody for watching or listening to this episode, whether it's on YouTube or any of the podcast streaming platforms. And I hope that everybody has an amazing day or night, depending on when you're watching or listening to this. And I will see y'all on the next episode of Not Your Average Joel. I'll talk to y'all later.
Have a great day. Over and out.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Not Your Average Joe. You should know the drill by now, but just in case if you don't, my podcast is available not only on YouTube, but also on most podcast streaming platforms, my Instagram page at Not Your Average Joel Podcast, and I also have a website that you can visit at notyouraveragejowelpodcast.com. My episodes will be coming out every Wednesdays going forward, so be sure to come back next Wednesday for a new episode. Thank you once again for your support, and I will talk to y'all in the next episode of Not Your Average Joe. Goodbye.